Hello everybody and welcome again to another video. It is time for my round 3 tips and predictions. I'm back on Squiggle, so I'll be going through my margins and scores again this week. But before that, I'd just like to take a look at how I'm doing in the tips. So if we go into the ESPN website, I'm currently on Cardman22's AFL tipping comp, and as you can see, I am doing god awful, 656 out of 808 in his comp. That could not be much worse. I got 3 out of 9 last week. I think I pretty much went for like some of the standard tips, except for like Collingwood and Adelaide. I tipped Adelaide. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. Looking back, that was a very dumb tip. Let's go on to my name. So yeah, here I am. Round 1 I got 6. Not too bad. Round 2, ugh. So I'm now on 9 with a margin of 50. That is awful. That actually could not be much worse. But anyway, let's get into my tips for this round. Hopefully this round I do a bit better. I would like to get a bit more than 3, so let's start it off. Western Bulldogs versus Sydney. Western Bulldogs 0-2. Unexpected loss to Carlton. That's one I didn't tip. While on the other hand, Sydney are playing some of the most exciting footy in the competition. Last week's good win against the Cats was almost overshadowed by Buddy's 1000th goal. I suppose almost rightfully so. I think Sydney can win again this week. On paper, I feel like we should win, but I'm gonna tip the Dogs here. This isn't really an upset. I think in the betting odds, Bulldogs are favourites to win. Barely. I'm going to tip the Dogs, even though I think there is potential for us to win. And in my heart, I think we probably could and should win. Last week I tipped against the Swans with the logic of, oh, well, if I get the tip wrong and we win, I'll be happy. If I get the tip right and we lose, whatever, at least I get a tip right. So I'm gonna go with that logic again this week, and I'm gonna tip the Dogs in a thriller by 8 points. Next up, Melbourne versus Essendon. This is a pretty one-sided match, I feel. I can't really see Essendon getting even really close in this game. They've had a shocking start. They played piss poor against the Cats, played alright against the Lions for the first quarter. They just got overrun in the end. Lions proved that they were the better side. Joey Danaher had another bit of a hit and miss day. I think he kicked a couple of goals, but also shanked a couple out in the fall. Took a good mark at one stage, I think. Yeah, so Danaher, he didn't really have the impact he maybe would have wanted against this old side, but whatever. Peter Wright had an outstanding first quarter, but then fell away in the game, I think. So I'm going to tip Melbourne pretty comfortably in this one, probably by 45 points. Next up, the second Friday night match, because there's 2 Friday night matches for some reason. The Showdown. This could be an interesting one, because as we all know, Port Adelaide, they got absolutely smacked up by the Hawks, who some had predicted to be in the bottom 2, and some even wooden spooners. That now, I mean, it's still a possibility, I guess it's only round 2, but Port, they played awful last week. They got 73 more disposals and won most of the stats, but their ball use was awful. Going inside 50, there was just so many shank kicks, grubbers along the ground, and just high kicks to an outnumber of Hawks defenders, and they could just easily pluck off an intercept mark and then counter-attack, which they were pretty good at. They were pretty good on the counter-attack, the Hawks. So yeah, Port won the stats. Ball use was horrible. Their backline looked really poor without Aliyah. Their forward line was terrible. Their forwards were just stagnant, and they were inaccurate in front of goal. Everything went wrong for the Power, and pretty much everything went right for the Hawks. I still think Port should bounce back against Adelaide. Adelaide haven't really shown much this season, but there is a bit of upset potential in this one, I feel. I'll go for it to be a bit of a low-scoring match. I'll go Power by 13. This is very definitely upset potential, this one. Gonna go with the Power. If they lose this game, then I think we can rule off finals for them, and man, they will not be in a good position. They looked okay against Brisbane in round 1, but that last week, wow, that was bad. Alright, next game. GWS versus Gold Coast, the Expansion Cup. I see an upset happening in this one, honestly. I'm going to tip the Suns here. GWS looked pretty average, pretty bad actually against Richmond. Really, their effort didn't seem up to what it was in round 1 when they fought hard against the Swans but still lost. Their effort last week was pretty bad, and there was just no real pressure on the Tigers at times, especially late in the game. I did tip Richmond to win in last week's tipping video, but then I changed my tip at like a couple of days or a day before when I heard that they had like Dusty out and Jack Revolt and Dylan Grimes out. I'm like, oh, you know, I think GWS is probably the safer tip, and then they lost. Like, they looked like they hardly put in an effort. I'm like, why did I change my tip? So yeah, now I know I can't trust GWS anymore. So I'm gonna tip Gold Coast here. I think Gold Coast by. I'll go Gold Coast by 17. They've played alright to start off the season, honestly. 27-point win against West Coast. Nothing big, not a big achievement there. They had half their team out, but they fought hard against the Demons. Demons were just too good in the end. So yeah. Next up, Collingwood versus Geelong. This again could have a bit of upset potential. I'm going to go with the Cats though in a safe tip. A reasonably close one, 13 points. Definitely could another game with upset potential, but I have to tip safely with the Cats. Collingwood, they've played really well, start off their season brilliantly with a win against the St Kilda, almost choked it, but then they got back on track in that last quarter and fought out the game and won. Then they smacked up Adelaide, who haven't looked good at all this season, apart from one good quarter against Fremantle in the first game. But yeah, I think Geelong, they'll bounce back after a loss against the Swans. They looked really good in the first round. I think they should bounce back and get up around that level again. But I still think Collingwood could make this a bit of a danger game for the Cats. Next up, Brisbane versus North at the Gabba. This really should be probably the biggest blowout of the match. The week. North Melbourne, they've looked pathetic so far, honestly. Like, round 1, they lost to the Hawks in what was probably the lowest standard for the skills in round 1. Maybe the Gold Coast and West Coast game, but this would be a close second. Then they only really just beat the Eagles, who had 3/4 of their best 22 out with COVID isolations and injuries. It was a really unconvincing win. It a lot of North supporters took it more as a loss than a win, and I can see why, because that was a pretty bad performance despite getting the 4 points in the end. So this could be really ugly, this one. Brisbane, they really should use this game to find their top form, because so far they've just done enough to win. They've showed that you don't always have to put in blistering good performances each week. Sometimes you just got to grind it out and get the wins. That's what they've done so far. This game they should make light work of this one, really. And if they try their hardest and North Melbourne dish up what they've dished up so far, dare I say it, this could be our first 100-point win of the season. I don't think I'll quite go that far, but it'll be a pretty big belting. I'll go Lions by about 77. That's 77, right? That is 77. Is that? That's 87. I can't do maths. Yeah, okay, that's better. Alright. Carlton versus Hawthorn. This is a top of the table matchup, if I believe. No. Hawks are the top of the ladder. Are Carlton second? I can't remember. Either way, battle of the undefeated. Who expected these two teams to be undefeated after round 2? I know I didn't. A lot of other people didn't as well. But yeah, Carlton versus Hawthorn. Who would have thought we'd be thinking up this hyping this up as a potential game of the round? I trust Carlton more than I do Hawthorn, because Hawthorn, they haven't come up against much so far. They beat North Melbourne in a pretty scrappy affair, and then they did belt Port, but Port played shocking, probably their worst game in a number of years, Port. So I do trust Carlton more. They have a really exciting team now. They have a really good midfield. Their forward line with Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay is clicking. Their back line still looks solid even without Liam Jones. So I think I've got to tip Carlton by about 4 or 5 goals. Yeah, I'll tip them by 26. Another Sunday match, St Kilda versus Richmond. I'm going to go with a bit of an upset in this one. I'll tip St Kilda. St Kilda quite often win the games you don't expect them to win, as they did last week. I don't think they're expected to win this one, kind of why I'm going to tip them. Richmond, they played well last week, but I don't know, I feel like they do have a few players back. This is a hard one to tip, honestly, because I want to tip the upset, but at the same time, Richmond on paper is definitely the more logical tip. I'll tip St Kilda in an absolute thriller. 1 point. There we go. The margin, I'm tipping at 1 point. St Kilda barely get over the line. This will be... I wouldn't be surprised if St Kilda got smashed in this one, but I'm going with the dangerous tip here. I kind of need to get back into things. I probably should be tipping all the safer tips this round, but whatever, I'm throwing caution to the wind. If I get another score of 3 out of 9, well, I am screwed for this year. Final game, we got the Western Derby. I think West Coast probably should be getting a few players back this round. They'll still be missing some, but they'll still have a lot of outs, like Dom Sheed and Elliot Yeo, and probably a few still with COVID isolation issues. If they do get players back, though, this could be a danger game, because Fremantle haven't played well so far this year. They almost coughed up a win to Adelaide, and they played pretty bad against St Kilda, and St Kilda honestly weren't that good either, but they still scraped over the line to win against Freo. So this could be a danger game for Fremantle. It could also be an opportunity for, like, the Lions to reach their top form. I'm gonna tip this in a close, because the Eagles, despite having 90% of their team out week in, week out, they've looked okay. So I'll tip this one Fremantle by 18 points. Again, could be a danger game, this one. Safer tip, definitely Fremantle, so I'll go with them. Because they're definitely, well, in the preseason they looked far better than West Coast, but they really haven't so far shown much in the actual season. And with that, we are done with my tips for round 3. At the end of round 3, I've got Brisbane on top with a pretty convincing win against the Roos. At the bottom, Essendon, not a good start for them. GWS, not far behind them. Port Adelaide get their first win of the season, so do the Bulldogs. Sydney slipped down a little bit. Hawthorn slipped down a little bit, although still in the top 4. Melbourne, around where they should be. Carlton still in the top 3. Didn't think I'd be saying that after round 3. But anyway, guys, that is it for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Please do if you want to show me your tips, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.